Hey there everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another Satisfactory video, where in today's video I was actually planning on doing something a little bit different in today's video. And well, in today's video I was planning on doing a full tour of my Satisfactory world. Now the reason why I want to do a full tour of my Satisfactory world is, well, I want to show you guys my entire world in full detail because, well, I mean, I've made a lot of changes to the world since I've last uploaded almost a year now, over a year. So clearly I've made a lot of changes to the world, and I do want to show you guys what those changes are. So anyways, just before we get into today's video though, if you guys could please like and subscribe, it really does help me out a lot. And so let's get into today's video. So to kind of start off the tour here, I was kind of planning on starting with my kind of home base here, or my dimensional depot factory I like to call it. It's just kind of where I make all of the necessary parts for my dimensional depot. And so with that in mind, it's not really that special per se, like there's not really anything crazy going on, so I am going to kind of just gloss over most of it. However, what I do want to focus on most is this top part here, because this top part here is where I'm making my tier 9 stuff, or I should say some of my tier 9 stuff. So the stuff I'm making up here would be the dark matter crystals, the oscillators or the other oscillators, and the quantum computers. Yeah, the neural quantum computers or processors, whatever you want to call them. And the other thing I also have stored up here, at least, are the time crystals, and then on the bottom floor here are the fixite trigons. And so just to kind of go a little bit more into depth with the time crystals and fixite trigons here, so I am making the fixite trigons at 30 per minute, or 30 fixite trigons per minute. And the recipe I'm using to make it is the Caterium ingot recipe. And now the reason why I'm using the Caterium ingot recipe over, say, aluminum or iron in this case is because I had a large surplus of Caterium nearby, so it was just really convenient. And also, as far as like the ratios go, like as far as how much like Caterium I need per fixite trigon, it was also the kind of like best ratio, if that makes sense. Because for example, like here it takes 40 Caterium ingots to make 10 fixite ingots per minute. But if I were to go to iron here, for example, it would take almost 100 iron, or sorry, my bad, 160 iron to make 6.667 fixite ingots. Or I mean, I do have it slightly underclocked, so that's not exactly the best example, but I think you guys can kind of get the point why I chose Caterium over the other two. So that's what's going on with my fixite trigons. And as far as the time crystals, what I did with the time crystals actually is very interesting, at least to me, because what you need to make the time crystals with, or the production line to make the time crystals, is actually very, not complicated, it's actually quite simple. It's only 2 machines. It's just very large because it does require a particle accelerator and a quantum encoder, if that makes sense. So I did actually have to build that factory, or I did have to build a separate factory all the way in the back here where all the coal nodes are back here. So if I just go ahead and slide my way over, I can show you guys what that looks like. And so coming up on the factory now, or it's not really a factory, it's like 7 machines here, then the miners here. So it's not really, like I said, as far as machines go, there aren't a lot of machines to actually process the time crystals. It's just the amount of space it takes, because I mean, I couldn't fit this at my other base, my kind of home base over there. But yeah, as far as time crystals goes, I am making, I think, about 30 per minute all in all, which doesn't sound like a whole lot at first, but I'm really only using these time crystals for making my belts. And same goes for the fixite trigons also. So at least to me, 30 per minute is actually not too bad, seeing how I'm probably not going to be using them a whole lot. And if I am going to need a lot of time crystals, for example, I do have an industrial storage container full of the stuff. So I do have like a lot of the time crystals in reserve if I do need them. And so I think that's pretty much about it as far as my dimensional depot factory or home base, whatever you want to call it is. I mean, like I said, I think that's pretty much about it as far as what's going on with it. And now as far as where I want to go from here, I think I want to go in kind of a circle and show you the factories that I've built in, well, like I said, a circle. So like I'm gonna go down and go to this factory here, and then to my oil factory, and then another factory I actually built down here, and then so on and so forth. So with that being said, I think the next factory I'm going to show you is that one. And so for longtime viewers of the channel, you would probably already know that that factory over there is making my modular engines and adaptive control units, but I have expanded upon it. And so just to give you guys a quick refresher on what's actually going on over there. So you can see here, I do have my modular engine and adaptive control units built up over here, but I've also expanded it to include the assembly director systems over here, which isn't a new thing. I do have a video showing how I built this. However, though, what is new is if I go all the way down here, there is an entirely new floor at the bottom of here. And what this factory is producing, or this production line is producing, it is making all of the magnetic field generators that I needed to complete phase 3, and also that I need for making, I think it's a space elevator part for phase 4. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on over here. And then another thing I should probably mention too is I have my modular engines going into this drone port, because in order to make the thermal propulsion rockets, I did need modular engines, and I did make my thermal propulsion rockets at a different factory, or I made a separate factory to make my thermal propulsion units and also my nuclear pasta. But what I'm getting at, or my point here, is instead of making an entirely new modular engine production line, I just thought it would be easier if I just droned off my existing supply here, which has actually worked out pretty well in my opinion. So that's what's going on over here. And then another thing I should probably mention is what's going on with the fuel situation here. And so as far as fuel that I'm using for my drone ports, I am actually using rocket fuel here for my drone ports and also for my jetpack. So that is another thing that I did make while I was away, and the rocket fuel has actually worked out pretty well, and I will show you guys my rocket fuel setup when I do get over there in just a minute. And yeah, so the reason that I am using rocket fuel rather than say like batteries or regular fuel or turbo fuel is simply because it was easier, if that makes sense. Like I already had the packaged rocket fuel, and I am making enough extra to just feed my drone ports, seeing how they aren't even using up that much. Like I think this one's only using up like about 7 per trip, which really isn't a lot. So I just thought it was convenient enough that I just use my rocket fuel rather than building up a battery factory for all of my drones. But anyways, that's enough rambling on about that. I think I'm gonna now go over to my aluminum factory, seeing how I've pretty much covered everything over here, because that's, I mean, like I said, that's about all that's new over here. And so as far as my aluminum setup goes, I don't think I actually changed any of it since my video that I made on it. So I am going to show it to you guys anyway, just to kind of refresh your memories. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot different about it. But anyway, so that now I'm actually up here, I mean, yeah, you can see that there's really nothing special going on here. The only alternate recipe I'm using up here is the solid aluminum ingot recipe, simply just to keep the smelting process, well, simple, and also use up less power, because if I use the regular recipe, then I would need a foundry, because I would need to use silica along with the aluminum scrap. Now I do believe off the top, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do believe you do get a slightly better ratio if you do use the regular recipe, but at least for me, this is just simpler. And now as far as how much I'm making per minute, I believe I'm making 450 per minute, which is enough to feed my dimensional depot factory over there. So that's pretty nice. Anyways though, so from here, I am now gonna go and cover my kind of oil refining area for my dimensional depot factory over there. Or well, most of it's for my dimensional depot turbo factory, but some of it's also for my modular engine factory and that kind of factory block over there. But coming down here, you can see that there's really nothing too special about it. I just have a ton of refinery set up here, making plastic and rubber and then petroleum coke to get rid of the heavy oil residue, so nothing too special. However, the change I did make was obviously now I'm making rocket fuel rather than my regular fuel I was using for my jetpack before. And so just to kind of cover what I did here, I am making 80 fuel per minute using the regular fuel recipe here, which is then going into this blender, which is using the alternate nitro rocket fuel. And now the reason why I'm using this alternate recipe is because, well, for one thing, I can totally bypass making turbo fuel, which is just a no-brainer for me anyways, because it saves me a whole other machine, or machines I should say, that I would need to build to make the rocket fuel, or sorry, the turbo fuel. So that's why I'm using this alternate recipe rather than the regular one. And so as far as how much rocket fuel I'm making, you can see there I'm making 120 per minute, which is then getting packaged into packaged rocket fuel, which I'm making 60 per minute of. Now I guess that's only the kind of annoying thing about this setup, is that it is a 1-to-2 ratio, or a 2-to-1 ratio or something like that. Essentially you're turning 120 rocket fuel into 60 packaged rocket fuel, if that makes sense. Anyways though, that's pretty much all that's special around here. And so from here I am going to go over to the green fields over in the southern part of the map, because I do actually have a separate factory there where I'm making the biochemical spheres, or whatever they're called, for the final phase of the space elevator. So if I go ahead and make my way over there, you guys can see the factory for yourselves. And so now that I've made my way over to the green fields here, or the grassy fields, whatever they're called, I forgot off the top of my head. Anyways, I have this small factory going on over here, making the biochemical spheres. At least I think that's what they're called. Yeah, the biochemical sculptors, or something like that. Anyways, I am making this space elevator part here at this factory. And now as far as how many I'm making per minute, I am making 4 per minute, which is a lot. I mean, seeing how I already have the 1,000 I need to complete the space elevator, so that's pretty nice. And now as far as how I actually have set it up and all that, it's pretty simple. There's really not a whole lot going on because it is a pretty simple space elevator part. The only really annoying thing was getting over the assembly director systems from my other factory, and also finding enough SAM needed to actually make the biospheres or biosculptors, whatever you want to call them. And so yeah, that's pretty much that space elevator part in a nutshell. And now as far as the other two space elevator parts, I was thinking about kind of where to build them, and as far as what their resources demand, there really isn't any good one place to put them that just has all of the resources needed. I mean, there are a few places that are better than others, because I mean, here in the green field or grassy fields over here, you got a lot more resources. Or the dune desert, I mean, I pretty much left it untouched, so that's pretty good. But yeah, so I was pretty much thinking about putting the factory for the last two space elevator parts either in the dune desert or over here in the grassy fields, maybe a combination of both. So that's kind of just what I was thinking about how to go about those two space elevator parts. And now as far as the nuclear pasta, I mean, I've already automated that for the other space elevator phase, so I really don't need to worry about it. And speaking of which, that is actually the next factory on my list here to show you guys. And so as far as this next factory I'm going to show you guys, what I'm actually making at this factory is the thermal propulsion rockets and the nuclear pasta. And as far as where it's located, it is located kind of here, just north of the crater lake here, if that kind of makes sense. And now the reason why I did build it here is because I did need a lot of copper for the nuclear pasta, and also just other things nearby that I also needed, such as some bauxite here, or even the nitrogen gas glass node. I also needed some of that as well as the quartz. So it just seemed that this area was pretty rich in all of the resources I needed. And as far as other components that I also needed, like for example the modular engines I mentioned that I already automated, I just flew them in instead of making them again, just to save on power and also resources. But anyways, if I go ahead and make my way over to the factory, I can show you guys what that looks like. And so that now I have made my way over to this factory, you can see here that it is actually pretty spaced out. Like, I really just decided to really space out the machines for this one. I honestly don't even know why. It was just kind of an unconscious decision I made at the time, because like this factory could definitely be like way more compact and smaller. But anyways, that's a little tidbit I thought I should mention. So as far as like what's going on with all of these refineries here in the back, this is all the copper I need to make all of the copper powder. And buddy, I mean, like, let me tell you how much time I actually had to spend setting up these refineries. I mean, it looks like it should have taken a relatively short time to set up, but like it really wasn't, because I kept getting numbers wrong and stuff, so it was just really annoying to set up the copper ingot production over here for all of the copper powder I need. But anyways, that was a quick tidbit about that. But from there, everything else is pretty straightforward. Over here I have my aluminum setup, which I actually didn't need a whole lot of aluminum. Like, if I really wanted to, I could have just flown in the extra ingots, seeing how I only needed like what? Okay, so actually I'm pretty wrong. I needed about 120 ingots here, so I actually did need to make a bit of an aluminum ingot setup here. Now the reason why I said a 120 is because this machine is underclocked. It's only make 3 per minute. Anyways, going into a bit too much detail there, but as far as how many nuclear pasta I'm making per minute, I am only making 1 nuclear pasta per minute, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I already have enough nuclear pasta to unlock the next phase of the space elevator, so nuclear pasta is pretty much taken care of. And then as far as what's going on under here, this is where I'm making the thermal propulsion rockets, which is pretty much all of this down here. And I actually remember that the thermal propulsion rockets was especially annoying to set up for some reason. I actually don't exactly remember why. And that's honestly because I set this up a while ago and forgot about it. But anyways, it seems to be running at, I would say, near 100% efficiency, which is always a good thing. But that's pretty much all that's going on down here. And so now the thing that I think most of you are the most interested in is what's going on with my big mega nuclear power plant. Seeing how that is the last video I uploaded was about, you know, building up more of the nuclear power plant, or more specifically the non-fissile uranium, and how to kind of set up that part of the factory and how to get rid of the non-fissile uranium. So if I just go ahead and follow this train line down here, which actually transports all of my uranium ore, I can just go ahead and follow this train line all the way back to the factory and show you guys what's up. And so that now I've made my way over to my mega nuclear factory over here, or nuclear power plant I should say. You can see here that for me personally, this is the biggest project that I have ever worked on. And so to just quickly kind of summarize what's going on here, I am making 12 uranium fuel rods per minute, and so that's what all of this is here. This is all for making my 12 uranium fuel rods per minute, which is then going into, I think it's 60 nuclear power plants, which can then make, I think that's about 150,000 megawatts. Yeah, I just double checked it here. It is 150,000 megawatts, which is a lot of megawatts. Probably a lot more than what I would actually need to complete the last 2 space elevator parts. But just so you guys can see it in the power pole here, this is what my grid kind of looks like for the most part. I am making around 230,000 megawatts, and that is also because in this corner, in this corner of the map here, I actually have a fuel generator set up making about about 60,000 megawatts, I want to say. And then on top of that, I also have the alien augmenter giving me a free 20,000 megawatts, which is how I am making my 230,000 megawatts. But anyways, from there, another thing I do want to mention is how I actually set up the water extractors for my nuclear power plant. And so now, as far as what I've observed on YouTube and how other people set up their nuclear reactors, what I see most often is people would just make this giant kind of pipeline with like 10 or 20 pipes just going, or pipe runs just going everywhere, and it's this big mess of, you know, balancing it between all of the nuclear reactors and stuff. And so I actually, at least in my opinion, thought of a pretty ingenious solution to this, and that is every nuclear reactor gets their own water extractors. And so I did this for a couple reasons. Now, the first reason is I already kind of mentioned it, to kind of make things more simple. But also, I don't have to wait for my nuclear reactors to build up on water, or I don't have to wait for an entire pipeline to build up its water pressure and stuff, if that makes sense. Because every nuclear reactor has their own water extractor, so getting water to the actual reactors is almost instantaneous, which is, in my opinion, very helpful. It also makes it very easy to shut down the reactors in an emergency, because all I need to do in the control tower is turn off the water extractors, and the power plants just pretty much shut down almost immediately, in case I do have a backup of nuclear waste, which has happened a couple of times. And so to get into that in a little more detail, I'm going to head over here, which is where I am processing all of the nuclear waste. So this whole area here is taking the nuclear waste and turning it into non-fissile uranium. And so actually this is kind of like where I left off in my Satisfactory series last time, or in my last video. And so to just kind of briefly explain again what's going on here, I am taking the uranium waste, turning it into non-fissile uranium, pretty simple stuff, and then taking it and turning it into plutonium fuel rods. Now, one problem I did run into while making, or I ran into a few problems that actually irradiated my world at one point, is that my non-fissile uranium kept backing up. And now the reason why that kept happening is actually for a very, I would say, annoying reason that was going on with my particle accelerator, or more specifically, my aluminum production over here. And so, to summarize my aluminum production here for my plutonium fuel rods, so in order to get rid of the non-fissile uranium, you need to put it in aluminum casing and then make encased plutonium cells with this alternate recipe. And now, I think for obvious reasons, I decided to pick this alternate recipe because it was just way simpler as far as production goes and stuff. But this alternate recipe also requires aluminum casing, which usually isn't a problem, except the way I set up my aluminum scrap setup here almost shut down. I shouldn't say almost shut down, it did shut down my nuclear power plant here a couple times. And now the reason why it did, or it was doing that, was because of the water flow here. And so what kept on happening was, originally I had it set up so this byproduct water here would backflow into this pipe, or into these pipes I should say, which will then be used up here to make the alumina solution, if that kind of makes sense there. And so what kept on happening is, no matter how much I got the ratios just right, these pipes kept backing up, which then stopped the aluminum production, which meant I couldn't make the casings, which then stopped all of this, and then stopped my my plutonium rod production, which then backed up the non-fissile uranium, and then completely irradiated my world a couple times. Now again, the way I fixed this problem is honestly pretty simple. I just had to get the alternate wet concrete recipe to get rid of the excess water. So nothing too crazy as far as how I'm getting rid of the water, but it definitely did back up my system a couple times. But after that was pretty much solved here, the aluminum was just fine and everything ran perfectly again. And also the other thing I should quickly mention that I do have located down here is my massive battery bank here. I shouldn't say massive, it's actually quite small compared to what I've seen online, but honestly, in my opinion, it should be big enough to jumpstart my nuclear power plant in an emergency if I really needed to. So that's what this is all for. Because if I needed to jumpstart my world, then obviously, I mean, this many battery packs isn't going to do it. If I needed to jumpstart my world, that's where my backup fuel generator factory would come in, which I will show you guys here in a minute. But just before I do that, I should quickly mention that I am making about 3 plutonium rods per minute, or it's actually 3 and a bit. Now what I mean by that, it's kind of like 3.125 or something. But anyway, so I'm making about that many plutonium fuel rods. And so the cool thing that now 1.0 has come out is you can actually use the plutonium fuel rods and also get rid of the plutonium waste. So if I really needed a ton of extra power, I could turn the plutonium fuel rods, or sorry, I could put down more nuclear power plants and use the plutonium fuel rods, which is super helpful. And then I can make the plutonium waste into, I think it's the fixed site fuel rods, and then I could even use those, and those don't even produce any byproducts, which is super cool. But that does seem like a whole ton of work, and honestly, for how much power I'm already making, you can see here, I think I'm pretty set for the rest of this playthrough, so I don't think I will be doing any of that. But anyways, not to ramble on too much about this whole system here, that's, well, pretty much everything that's going on with my nuclear power plant here. And so, like I said, the last stop I do want to make is going over to my backup fuel generator, so you guys can, well, also see it. Now, I did make a video explaining how I built that backup fuel generator, or how I did build up my fuel generator there, so you guys could go ahead and watch that video, but I will briefly summarize it for you in this video here. Now, it's important to note that I haven't actually made any changes to the actual factory, so most of it's pretty much the same as my video that I made on it. Like I said, I figure I should show you guys anyway, and so that now it is within render distance here, you can see that it is my second biggest project, I would say, as far as Satisfactory projects goes. And so the way I have this set up is actually using a few different alternate recipes. So the first thing I do is I turn the crude oil into heavy oil residue, and then I take that heavy oil residue here, mix it with water, and then turn it into fuel using the diluted fuel recipe. And so the reason why I'm using these two alternate recipes is because you actually get a lot more fuel per crude oil using these alternate recipes than if you were just going to do it conventionally using the regular fuel recipe or even just the residual fuel recipe. So that's how I'm making a ton of fuel actually. I don't remember exact figures off the top of my head, but it's something like 6,500 fuel per minute I'm making, which is feeding into about, again, I don't remember exact numbers, but I think it's something like 140, 150 fuel generators, which is making a total of 60,000 megawatts of power, which is how I jump-started my huge nuclear plant over there too. And also, as always, in case of an emergency, I do have a ton of fuel stored up here in case I do need to use it, you know, for whatever reason, if the nuclear power plant goes down or whatever. But anyways, I think that's pretty much it as far as this factory goes. I mean, there's really nothing, I shouldn't say too special about it, but nothing that I haven't already said. And so from here, I think that's pretty much everything. I mean, I guess I could just quickly explain that down there is where I'm making all of my steel needed for my dimensional depot factory, but that really, honestly, I don't think you guys need to see it, but I'll show you guys anyway. So you can see here, this is kind of like I said, where I'm making all of my steel, and also where I set up my first kind of coal generators here to kind of jumpstart the dimensional depot factory. And so as far as how I'm making the steel, I am using the alternate recipe that uses iron ingots rather than the iron ore to get 60 steel per minute rather than the base 40. So I just thought I should mention that real quick. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much about it over here. I got some coal generators kind of running over there. They're not really doing a whole lot, but I just never really got around to taking them down, and honestly, they're not really doing anything harmful. It's not like they're sucking up like coal that I desperately need or anything, so I just thought I'd let them run. Why not? That's about, I think, 2,400 extra megawatts I get out of that, so why not? But anyways, I think that is about it, because I am now back at my kind of dimensional depot factory or main hub, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that's about it as far as all my factories here in this world. if you guys do want to see more in my world, or I should say want to see something in my world in more detail, definitely do leave a comment down below so I know what you guys want to see more of. And now real quickly, I do want to just quickly want to talk about, why I was away for a while, and also kind of like the future of my channel. And so just kind of briefly summarize why I was away. It's just pretty simple. You know, life got busy. I went to trade school and was really busy with that kind of stuff. So I didn't have a whole lot of time for the channel, but now I do have a lot of time for making YouTube videos again. And so that's kind of the other thing too I want to mention is if you guys have any suggestions for any games you want to see me play, like any other types of games, whether they be, I don't know, survival games or whatever, you know, definitely leave it in the comments, and who knows, maybe I will make a video about it. But anyways, I'm pretty much just rambling on about nonsense at this point, so thank you guys for staying to the end of the video. If you could also just please like and subscribe to the channel, it really does help me out a lot, and I really hope you guys did enjoy this video because I know I did. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.